I think the one thing I learnt early and quickly, which is important, I think, in life lessons, is to learn them quickly. It's, learn quickly and fail quickly. And I think I did fail quickly early, is to not try and mix the two. So I learned very quickly that either in that moment or in that time I was a mom, not trying to do emails and be on the phone at the same time never works. You do everything badly. Or I was at work.
A couple of things I'm pretty big on saying is, one, most of the time, most of these events, there's the guru on stage and he tells you how much you're going to learn from it, how fantastic it is. And I always tell you, you're going to learn more from the room than you are from me. You're going to learn more from the people in the room and the experiences they had. And we always like to put people in front of you who've done some incredible things, amazing things. And even some of her accomplishments, I'm not going to read all out because she doesn't need much of an introduction because we're going to get through it in the interview. But I'm so excited to introduce our next guest speaker. I've always loved her on a show I devour. How many of you seen a show called Dragon's Den? Yeah, pretty cool, right? You learn so much from watching it. I love especially the pictures and what entices a dragon to want to invest in it, and it's a great learning opportunity. But I often think to myself, like, imagine how astute a business person you have to be invited to be on Dragon's Den. Just that alone, I always think to myself, like, how incredible would it be to aspire to that type of thing? You guys with me, yes? Yes. So we have Sarah Willingham here with us today. So let me tell you a little bit about Sarah. So those of you that don't know, Sarah has been in the restaurant industry for many, many years. She's been involved with restaurants like Pizza Express, etc. She's making her place on stage a little bit too soon, but that's fine. But I'll just. but just wait. Almost, Sarah. Almost coming. Wait, coming. I want to make sure they think much more, even bigger. So she's been involved in incredible things, incredible restaurants. She's opened private equity businesses. Just to give you an example, in 2000, she was in Management Today named her as one of the 35 most successful women under 35. In 2016, Sarah was named one of Sunday Times' 500 most influential people in Britain. In 2017, Sarah received an honorary doctorate from Staffordshire University, and in 2018 received another honorary doctorate from Cranfield University and Oxford Brookes in recognition of her business acumen and entrepreneurship. She's been on many TV shows. She's been featured on many things on TV now. I am so excited to have her on stage. I've had an introductory meeting with her, and it was, it's so incredible about these things. She's so accomplished in her own right, but whenever I meet someone in a position, they're always just so nice. They're so awesome. They're so easy to get on, and we've just had such amazing conversation from the minute I had my first meeting with her. So, ladies and gentlemen, please raise the roof. Join me on your feet and welcome to the stage, finally, Sarah Willingham! Good job, there we go. Awesome. So after now welcoming her and then chasing her off the stage,
you all did so well considering you didn't know I was actually here. Well done.
Well, awesome. Sarah, it's so fantastic having you in the room.
Thank you for having me. These are my absolute favourite days where I get to sit in front of lots of business owners.
Yeah, well, these are incredible entrepreneurs, and we're here to learn from you. And I thought I'd just start the questioning a little bit to ask you about, your childhood, and especially with respect to entrepreneurship. Why do you think you ended up going into business, and did you have any influences growing up that either drove you towards business or not? So you want to share that a little bit with me?
Yeah, I mean, I'm from a northern working class background with parents that had a job and said, Sarah, get a job, graft, get a pension, that's your lot. And when I look back, I was always really interested in business, and it wasn't about being an entrepreneur for me, actually. I loved why were we all wearing the same trainers, eating the same cheese, doing the same things, singing the same adverts from the TV in our head. You know, what had happened to get all of that into our heads? I was always really fascinated by that. And then when I came to choose what I was going to do at uni, for me, business was a no-brainer, but my dad wouldn't let me have a gap year because he said, you've got to get a job, because if you go on a gap year, you'll never come back. Possibly right. So I that's why I ended up doing international business. So it was very much part of this desire to, in my 20s, I wanted to learn, loved business, was fascinated by it, didn't know which bit of it I was fascinated by, and I wanted to travel. And so that was why I chose the degree that I chose, and never looked back. I found my thing. Like, I did terrible in my A-levels, and then as soon as I started studying and learning something and then actually doing, the real work experience, I found something that I loved and therefore was actually good at as well. Because I do think when you do something that you love, or often the two go hand in hand, don't they? You're good at things. You love the things that you're good at, and you're good at the things that you love. So
you went into business and you studied, but what was your first, which other job or most influential that kind of led you down the path that you are now? So what did you come up?
Yeah, so, in my 20s, I'll try and keep this brief, but I went into restaurants, so I'd always worked in hospitality, like waiting on or helping out, whatever. Always worked in hospitality. I loved the industry. I have quite a low boredom threshold, and the great thing with hospitality is you know instantly if you've pleased somebody or not, and you can change it right there and then. So it was like the perfect industry for me, and I really, really enjoyed it. I was working in Paris as part of my international business degree.
I saw you studied at La Rochelle.
La Rochelle in Paris, loved it. It was brilliant. Again, desperate to travel. And I had a job on a Sunday in a pub called the Frog and Roast Beef. Of course, do you know what? Let me take it off.
Is it clicking?
Wait, let me take it off.
Do you want to bring a handheld? And then we can just move into a handheld, actually, if you want. Is you okay with that, Sarah?
Let me take it off. That might just work.
All right.
Well done. Thank you for saying
well
so.
Done.
Because I could have just gone on and you not heard anything. Perfect. So
Frog and
roast beef. And at the time, I was a runner on the Paris Stock Exchange. like in the old open outcry pits of the commodities trading.
Yes.
And I'd always wanted. I'd seen them on the telly and always wanted to work there. So I was a runner wearing those multicoloured jackets, doing that. On a Sunday afternoon, I did a job in this pub because I couldn't afford to go out when I was earning less than minimum wage, which was not much then. And if you worked in this pub on a Sunday afternoon or any time, they pooled the tips and you were allowed to drink there for free all week. So that was like, I'm going to get a job in this place. Brilliant. Anyway, long story short, but the people who had built the Frog and Roast Beef were also building the Planet Hollywood on the Champs-Élysées. And they'd gone to the founders, who were two graduates from INSEAD. They'd done an MBA at INSEAD and said, we are having a nightmare trying to open this site. The Americans are flying over on the red eye and waltzing into the site, and all the French builders and the French workers were sat there on their sort of makeshift tables, eating their baguette, pâté, having their 2 or 3 hour lunch breaks, and it was just not working. And they'd said to the owners, could you help us out? And to this day, and this was really a really big shift for me, these guys said, no, but there's this girl that works on Sunday afternoon. You should speak to her. And, at the time, I didn't. Now I would love to have the conversation with them to say, you changed the path that I was taking.
You don't know who said that?
At that moment.
Do you ever have context of who said that?
You don't. Well, they were the two founders at the time of the Frog and Roast Beef. They've actually gone on, they've got 15 sites now. And they've done really, really well. But that you never know, do you? You never know who at any moment what you're doing and if you're doing something well or... Anyway, the fact that they said that actually really changed my path, and I went into the business of restaurants rather than going through the normal path of like having a site, maybe having another site or becoming an area manager in a big, going through that standard kind of ops path, operations path. I went straight in and learned about the business of restaurants, and I was like, my brain loved it straight away. And that was really and then I stayed there, they ended up offering me a job. It was funny actually, because the vice president, this big, really important guy, they were all so important, all these guys that came over from America. And I was supposed to, translate actually what he said to all of the people on site, and then two, after he flew back to America, I was supposed to make it all happen. When we opened the Planet Hollywood on the Champs-Elysees, he said to me afterwards, Sarah, I wish I could do accents because it'd be funny, but I can't. And he said to me afterwards, Sarah, you never translated a word I said, did you? Right. There is no chance we would be sat here now with an open restaurant if I'd have translated a single word that you said. No chance. But anyway, I then fell in love with the business model of restaurants, loved it. Went to work for Planet Hollywood, then quite quickly in their head office in London, quite quickly realised that actually that was not a sustainable business model. Even early in my 20s, I was like, that doesn't make any sense. We spent this much money opening a site and it only makes this much money every week. That's not going to work. And then, but I loved restaurants and loved the international aspect. So went out and bought myself the FT, thinking I was really clever. Sat with it on my desk, folding it over. And there were two articles in there, and one was about the launch of Pret-a-Manger, and the other one was about Pizza Express just having floated. And I cut them out, and then phoned both Pizza Express and Pret-a-Manger and said, I think you should go abroad. And Pret-a-Manger were like, they have since gone abroad, I'd like to say. But Pizza Express said, come in and talk to us. And then I ran the international department at Pizza Express for a while and loved it. So it was, again, living my best life. So really had no desire to be an entrepreneur at this point. I was loving learning, being in business, getting stuck in, working with great people. And then I got towards the end of my 20s, and I'd always had this dream of being a mom of lots of children, wanted to have loads of kids. And I still hadn't met my husband or anything. And I thought to myself, Sarah, you are never going to be able to do this with this life. Like, it's not going to work.
In hospitality specifically.
In this life that I was living, where I was sometimes in 3 countries in a week. And basically, somebody else controlled my diary. That's basically where I was at the end of my 20s. And I thought to myself, the only way for me to have the life that I knew that I wanted to have was if I took control of my diary. And that was when I made the decision to be an entrepreneur. It was still doing what I love doing, but I needed to do it myself so that if one of my kids wasn't well in the morning, or I could take them to the doctors, rather than needing to be in Geneva or Moscow or wherever I needed to be that week. That was the epiphany moment for me, where I said, no, it's time for me to do it myself.
So you decided you wanted to be an entrepreneur. You had no money.
No money.
At that point. And then what were the steps that took place from cutting out a piece of paper and saying you should expand globally, and then going, I want to be an entrepreneur. Obviously want to stay in this industry, which is interesting because I don't know if you guys know, I might have spoken about before, and I told Sarah about, but I don't know if you know that my parents ran restaurants when I was younger. A really big restaurants, actually a franchise, but I grew up in the restaurant. When I was like 13, I would go to the till, and my job was to go check what revenue we had done for the day. And then I'd run back to my parents and say, we'd done this and this and this. And then I was a runner in the restaurant, and there was some good hard work. But one thing I know about the industry is the margins are tiny.
It's tough.
Yeah, so to go into an industry where margins are tiny, I mean, certainly there are closures of restaurants happening all the time. So, how did you take that next step? Raising funds, deciding you're going to be an entrepreneur yourself, and then I guess, how did you cope in an industry where, what is the key to making money in a restaurant industry when the margins are so tight? I guess those are my questions.
towards the end of my stint at Pizza Express, when I'd realised that international was not really core business for them. In fact, we'd started shutting down some of the ones that we'd opened in America, and they were done company-owned before my time, but I did all of the franchising, which was actually a far better business model, but that's by the by. Anyway, I'd gone to the board at Pizza Express and said to them, look, this isn't cool business. Like, it's not where you want to be. And I don't really want to be doing something that's that's not cool business anymore. And they'd said, well, don't leave. Why don't you stay with us and do what they call sort of special projects, which my dad says they're always the first to get made redundant. I think he's probably right. But anyway, so at this point, we did things like putting pizzas into the supermarkets, that type of thing. But the key, and this is the answer to the question, is I shared an office with the CEO and the managing director for a year. Amazing.
Yeah.
Properly life-changing for me, actually. And I must have driven them mad. I look back now and think, God, I must have been the most irritating person to have in that office, because I wanted to know everything. And at the time, Pizza Express was floated. So it was floated on the stock market, so a lot of equity. They just raised a lot of money, a lot of senior debt, so a lot of bank debt, which was that's important. And they were opening about 25 to 40 sites a year in the UK. They just bought back all the franchises. So it's a really key point at Pizza Express's growth. And what I did, having really held all these people on, sort of like, I just thought, God, they're all so clever. You know, I'll never understand all of this. Wow, the PLC world, what does all of that mean? And by the end of that year, I kind of sat back in my chair and went, oh my God, I totally get it. Like, I totally get what they've done. I understand the difference between making money and creating value, understood why they'd used equity markets rather than and mixing it with debt. I'd understood the return on investment model, which was actually how much do you spend on a site and then how much does it make every year, and why that was interesting to investors. And I understood basically what a profit and loss account should look like for a single restaurant, and then how you then grow that. So, like, if you give me a blank sheet of paper, I will just stare at it like nothing happens. But I can walk into one place and go, I know exactly how to have 100 of these. But I can't create the first one. That's what I learned.
Sorry, I didn't get it.
Oh, did everybody else get it? Because my watch didn't get it. And that was a real, again, another sort of, I guess, epiphany moment for me, where I was like, oh, I mean, obviously they are smart, but I'm not that smart. It's actually quite basic, this. I really understand what you do. So I then, having had this desire to be a mom, went to them and said, look, I can't, you know, I was still doing lots of international travel with them as well, and still somebody else ran my diary. And I looked around and thought, well, Indian restaurants it was like the most popular food in the UK at the time, 10,000 independent sites, independent restaurants, but there was no chain. Nobody had created a chain. So I went to the board of Pizza Express and said, I want to have the largest chain of Indian restaurants in the UK. Let's do it together. Why don't you back me? And I'll do it as like a subsidiary. And they were all like, no, Sarah, we do pizzas. We don't do Indian food. And that was the moment where I thought, no, I actually know how to do this. I know exactly how to do it because I just learned it at Pizza Express. I'd seen what they'd done. And I thought, I understood it. I always think, if you can explain something in a minute, or less than a minute actually, in order to be able to do that, you have to really, really understand your subject, really understand it. Yeah. It's like live TV is the best thing ever if you have to explain something to an audience in like a minute or 2 minutes, because you have to really, really, really understand. And I thought, I understand this so well that I can sit in front of investors and I could pitch this idea in a really short space of time with the confidence of actually having just watched it being done at Pizza Express and knowing that I could do it. I knew I could do it. And that was really where that confidence came from, I think, was just having that year.
And that was your first. I'm interested actually with you spending a year with the CEOs.
Yeah.
If you've ever emulated that with people that you are mentoring, actually, have you ever had a key person in your business spend a lot of time with you, like sitting in an office type of thing?
So that's how I run my teams. I'm really transparent.
Yeah.
I share everything. I never, ever ask anybody to do anything without explaining why, ever. And I think it's really important. I mean, even the other day, I was trying to understand an element of our cash flow at the moment. And I knew that somebody, I'd spoken to my CFO, who had spoken to a financial controller, who had got like an accounts payable person who was trying to reconcile some of the VAT that we'd paid earlier on in the year. And I went into the finance team and said, right, who's doing the VAT? And he sort of went, I am. And I said, do you know why you're doing it? Like what? And nobody had explained why he was doing it. And I sat down next to him and I said, let me explain to you why this matters, why I care about this work that you're doing and why you're doing it. And it was literally like somebody just turned a light bulb on. And that, I think I got that from that year of asking all of those questions, that I've taken that with me forever in how I've run teams, that there is nothing I won't share.
Got it.
And I want to explain everything, because I think when people understand the why, I think, firstly, that's where your motivation comes from. It's not what. You're never motivated by what. You're motivated by why. Like, why did I want to become an entrepreneur? Because I wanted to be a mum of lots of children. That's what motivated me, right? It wasn't what I did then.
Or, I guess,
what's
autonomy.
the easy bit.
Autonomy, being able to do what you want to do when you want to do it.
But yes, but it was why did that drive me, which meant that every time I was faced ever with a crossroads during those next few years of my life, I came back to the why, which was what's really driving me here. And it was that freedom and that autonomy and needing to be empowered myself to run my own diary. It would have been very easy to have been sidetracked, I think, actually, by all of the opportunities or threats or whatever that life throws at you all the time, comes in all over the place. But if you are stuck with your why, that's what gets you up in the morning. And I think that's really critical with actually how you talk to your teams. So people understand it. I think they feel different.
Got it. And then you grew, talking about teams, you grew Bombay Bicycle Club.
Yes.
To, I read 1,500, was it 1,500 staff members across Bombay?
Yes, 1,500 staff members in the end, yeah.
And talk about teams for a little bit. I mean, it's so integral with us. It's just impossible. It's impossible to run a great practice without having a great team behind you. And I was speaking to Sarah at the back of the room, and she told me a story about a piece of advice she was given, and if I will share this quickly, she said, his name is saved in my phone as
Yoda.
And I was like, well, I want to hear this story. What did he say to you?
And a picture of Yoda comes up on my phone every time he phones me. It's brilliant. Makes me laugh anyway. But yeah, so he said to me in my 20s, and at the time I remember thinking, that's not the most brilliant. I mean, like, that's not that smart. He just said, surround yourself with brilliant people. He said, that's the best piece of advice I've ever been given, Sarah, and now that's the best piece of advice I can give you, surround yourself with brilliant people. I was expecting this amazing, like really, really clever piece of advice, and I kind of dismissed it at the time. Oh my God, it's the single best piece of advice I've ever been given and that I can ever share with anybody. And it's because, I always say in our business, I've got nearly 50 bars now, and we're in the recruitment business. We're not in any other type of business. We recruit, and we have to recruit well, because when you have the right people that are motivated and driven and smart and capable, everything falls into place in every single aspect of my business. I'm talking about the person that greets you when you walk into one of my bars, the general manager in a bar, or it could be my managing director. All of them. It's all about getting those teams right.
Yeah.
And it's the most important thing that I do, actually.
I think it's so interesting that your latest venture, which we'll get to into a moment, is essentially selling alcohol or entertainment. And you say that your business is not about selling alcohol, it's about recruitment and only recruitment. And it's quite an interesting theme we've had up here. We've had this many times. Remember, Emerson Clare said the same thing. Always be all the time, you know. So where do you find great talent?
It's really hard. Yeah. It really is hard. And I'm at every, like from a senior level, I'm every headhunter's worst nightmare because I do not stop until I will, like, no, next round, and I will never compromise.
What is your most attractive feature in a potential hire? Is there something that like stands out for you that like, if they've got that, that, you know, I'm a sucker for that, or I'm in, and like...
The most important question I ask is, have you got any questions for me? And it's those questions, and it's the way, it's what I'm trying to work out is how their brain works. So obviously it depends on the level that you're recruiting at, of course, but let's say I was hiring a finance director, and we're a public company, and you know, have you got any questions for me? I need the finance director to be questioning not just something that might be in my accounts, but actually the way I've structured the business, the shareholders. How does that work? What if you need to raise more equity? How are you funded? I want that. It's that the way that their brain works. I mean, in your business, it's going to be completely different. You will know, but What do you want to ask me? And when they go, oh, nothing really, I'm like, okay, time of death. You know, that's... you know...
Right there, at that very moment. Very good.
But yeah, that's the most important thing for me. It's the type of questions, because what that does is explain to me how their brain works. Yeah. That's what I'll understand.
If I could segue just quickly, you said a lot of your why, you've mentioned your children quite a few times.
Yeah.
Yeah. And could you speak to that a little bit, and managing home, whatever that looks like, and with being a busy entrepreneur and this myth, if you will, of balance, and how that works?
I mean, that's without a doubt the hardest thing, I think, ever. Like, you know, give me a business to run.
Yeah.
Give me a home to run. But both, it's hard work. And mine are a little bit older now, so mine are all, I've got 4, all between 12 and 17, so they're a bit older. Problems are much bigger, but they're older, so they're more independent, which means I can now run a business again, actually. I feel like I can. I don't feel as compromised. I think the one thing I learnt early and quickly, which is important, I think, in life lessons, is to learn them quickly. It's, you know, learn quickly and fail quickly. And I think I did fail quickly early, is to not try and mix the two. So I learned very quickly that either in that moment or in that time I was a mom, not trying to do emails and be on the phone at the same time never works. You do everything badly. Or I was at work, and that was how but I'm lucky in the way my mind is able to compartmentalize stuff, but I'm extremely maternal. Like, I just can't. It's a proper thing. You know, I need to be a mom. So that guilt that you feel that people don't talk about enough is very, very real. If you don't feel like you're giving enough time to it. But I felt that I constantly had to keep readdressing that balance all the time. And it wasn't something that I would let spiral out of control in one direction, like for a month. I would readdress it in a week. Yeah. You know, I was like, oh, that's not right. This week's been so I try too much in this direction, so I try and do more over here to rebalance it the following week. But I think I also married really well. Okay. That helps. He's great, and he was brilliant at home. So, like, he was very, very good at helping with the balance. And I think, you know, I actually went to a thing the other day all about women in business. And I did a speech, and at the end of it, I said, the one thing that I don't think we do enough of is actually thank the men, the ones that are that are being supportive of women having of being able to shine,
yes,
and be their best selves, and because I couldn't have done it without my husband. Not a chance. It would have been impossible.
I think the interesting thing about business and family is it doesn't matter the size of the business, in my opinion, that you still have to go to work every day, whether you're running a multi-million pound business or we're running our small to medium sized businesses. And I don't know about you guys, but that balance goes too much the one way and then back the other way. So I'm always interested. I always ask that question of entrepreneurs, perhaps maybe because I'm in the phase of my life where I've got 2 young kids. So I've got a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. And it's hard.
Yeah,
it's hard. And when you hear one of your kids sometimes like say, hey, "Daddy, I'm talking to you," and you're like answering emails and stuff, and you're like, stop. So I always like to ask incredibly successful people if they have the similar challenges, and it's always the same.
Always the same. We all have the same challenges. Yeah. Everybody does, and I think the communication's really important. I've always leveled with my kids. Always, even when they were really little, I've always explained, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it.
Do they like that you're on TV?
So Dragon's Den gets shown in schools a lot, which is really funny. So when they sit there and go, I actually had to sit through an hour of you in Dragon's Den today.
Oh, shame.
It was awful.
Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying this video and you'd like to see more content like this, please do me a favor. Just smash that like button, comment down below, or subscribe, and make sure you turn your notifications on so you can see more content just like this.
Oh, that's awesome. I tell you, well, thanks for sharing that with us. I think it's always helpful for us to hear. It's we're all going through those similar challenges of trying to balance the two. And if I segued into running these businesses, you're still involved in the entertainment industry. Talk about COVID for a second and lockdowns. Raise your hands if there's no other way to say it, if you shat yourself when you had to close your practice for a bit.
Yeah,
that must have been like steroids for you guys, but you got rental to pay, staff to pay. Tell us about what is I just would love to have fly on the wall and the carnage behind the scenes of the entertainment industry.
So I've just been to London on the Thursday, I think it was the Thursday, and this was still when also my husband's Danish, right? So Denmark were about a week ahead of us in terms of, so he was reading all this stuff out to me from the Danish newspapers. I was like, hang on, is this, so it was the Thursday, I went up to London and you could feel it, this like the undertone that something was going to happen, but I was still having conversations with people and everybody was like, what are you talking about? Anyway, by the Sunday, I think Denmark had closed down on the Friday, and I was like, frankly, shit, this is actually going to happen. And we just moved home as well, and there's no Wi-Fi, and I couldn't get a bloody signal. It was a nightmare. I kept having to drive down the road, sit on the seafront in Brighton with my laptop and like trying to get 4G, and I called every board. I called a meeting for every single board that I was on, every single investment that I got on that Sunday and said, this is going to happen. And half of them, really interesting, were like, no. It all happened that following week. And I was like, especially in the restaurants, was really important. I think this is going to happen. It's going to happen fast, and we may not have a chance to close in an orderly way.
Yeah.
So starting today, you get all the staff in, close down the sites, clean up. We're going to be shut
because you had food on site. You had waste.
We need to close down in an orderly fashion.
So you're always a bit ahead of the curve there.
But 48 hours, right? So not much. It was skin of teeth.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you just don't know, because we had this whole period, didn't we, where we didn't know whether or not we were going to get any help.
Yeah.
And it was chaos. Yeah. Everybody was properly panicking.
Yeah.
And I'm not bad. I quite like a bit of a crisis. I don't mind a crisis, if you know what I mean. So I was at my best. Right, I've got all of this.
Yeah.
But this one,
Yeah.
I was, we did not know where we were going to go with it. That was the problem. And it was just waiting it was all about comms. So it was like communicating to everybody as much as you possibly could, but not without, we don't know anything. As soon as we do know something, we'll let you know. But at that point, we were, we didn't get rid of any staff. It was really, really early days. We were like, surely you can't.
Did you have to let staff go?
No, actually, we didn't. We kept everybody on furlough.
Yes.
Yeah, we managed to keep everybody on furlough, but the furlough scheme was amazing.
Yeah, saved.
Yeah,
especially in the entertainment industry.
Obviously, we're all paying the price for it.
And then
now,
you had rates. Was there rates? There was a rates reduction.
Rates reduction was really important, but the big thing was the landlords.
We didn't get rates reduction, did we? Yeah, so that was always, we were always looking at, because we had 8 sites at the time, always, and we were like, and the landlords.
The landlords, that was the big one. It was getting on the phone to all of the landlords. And actually, it was certainly the first time in my work life, for 25 years, that I had seen the balance of power shift over to the tenant. Never seen that before.
Oh, to the tenant.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very much so, because people just stopped paying, right?
Yeah.
Didn't pay, and so then it suddenly became a negotiation where the power lay more with the tenant than it did with the landlord, and it was really interesting. Some landlords were awful, really awful, but they got named and shamed. A lot of them did, actually. Certainly in
institutional landlords more than this.
Tended to be institutional landlords.
Yeah.
And then some were absolutely amazing, really supportive.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, so you're in lockdown, you have all these challenges, and then I'm so interested, what we haven't really addressed is Sarah's latest venture is called Nightcap.
Yeah.
I'm going to give still a little bit of thunder here, but started in lockdowns, and now, 2-3 years later, is doing what revenue?
Nearly 70 million.
70 million.
Yeah.
Pretty good, yes?
Yeah, really well.
Yeah. And so, what in the world
was I thinking?
Yeah. because everything was saying run from hospitality.
Yeah. So first lockdown came to an end, and we had the Eat Out to Help Out, if everybody was remember it. And it was crazy. I'd never seen demand like it.
Oh wow.
It was everybody. You can't cage us. We are sociable animals. We need to be out speaking to people and meeting people. And so it was almost sort of the perfect storm, really. At this point, there was no vaccine. We were still in the middle of it, or it was the end of the first lockdown. But I'd seen this really unprecedented demand. I'd done all the negotiations with these landlords, and it was a very, very, very different conversation that I'd ever had before. Then I was speaking to lots of different entrepreneurs who were having huge problems. Banks were closing in on businesses. Private equity were pulling out of funds and either trying to sell things off or basically batten down the hatches and just saying, forget it, no growth. But without exception, really, every single business in hospitality had taken on quite a large C-bill to be able to get it through, which was amazing debt, by the way, like amazing debt. And thank goodness for those, they were great. And we also had the bounce back loans for smaller businesses, which were brilliant. But what it suddenly meant was that you'd got these great businesses, their balance sheets were just a disaster because huge amounts of debt. And it ends up with the bank controlling you when you take on that much debt into your business. You've got entrepreneurs that are really frustrated because they're not going to be able to grow. You've got landlords that are actually desperate for somebody to come in and just pay the rent, frankly. So suddenly you're getting sites that used to cost hundreds of thousands.
I literally wrote down the deals must have been everywhere.
Unbelievable negotiations that you could do on
rent-free
on
periods and
huge reverse premiums, rent-free periods. People were interested in covenants rather than premiums. I mean, it was crazy. And Michael and I, every idea we've ever come up with was always been on holiday, always. And it's always week 3 of a holiday, because I think you have to allow the adrenaline to leave your system to let your brain be creative again. And we got towards the end of week 3 in that summer, actually, and we were in Switzerland and hiking, and Michael had said to me at the beginning of the holiday, what the hell are you going to do about London Cocktail Club? And that was one of our investments. It was one that I was very much part of. We'd got 10 bars at the time. And I said, oh, it's week 1, shut up. Stop asking me questions, I don't know yet, I'm not ready. And got to the end of week 3 and he was like, well, any ideas of what you're going to do? And I said, well, actually, the only thing I will consider is that we float, which is what I'd seen Pizza Express do. And I'd also done twice in my 30s as well, floated 2 other businesses. Is we float and use equity because the debt was the problem. Everybody had taken on this huge amount of debt. We'll float a business and buy lots of different chains of cocktail bars that are not distressed when it comes to trade. Like, there's nothing up with them. People were going into them, but it's actually the balance sheet. So they just needed refinancing, really, with equity. Really frustrated entrepreneurs that were desperate to be part of something that was exciting and would grow. But then also you'd got private equity that was desperate to get rid of stuff, and banks that we could have a conversation with that were just offloading. You know, they were just really starting to turn the screw on the businesses and say, and starting to call some of their debt. So it was starting to get an unhappy environment, certainly for entrepreneurs. And so I sort of almost flippantly said, well, I'll do that. And I'd gone up to get a coffee, and by the time I got back, Michael had modelled it. He'd got his laptop open. He's like, oh, this will work. I was like, oh, my God, I knew this was going to happen. And so this was the August and September. We came home and phoned a broker that we've worked with before and said, we want to float a hospitality business on AIM.
And there was 10 sites
by the
at the
end
time.
of the year. Well, we had to acquire them. So we had to raise enough money to buy that as our first one, float on AIM, and then we would buy up others. And they actually laughed. Like, I can still hear the laugh on the phone, laughed out loud and said, and then there was silence, and we were like, no, we are. That is what we want to do. It's like, you are absolutely barking mad. You'll never get that over the line. There's no vaccine. What are you talking about? And I was like, Matt, we are going to do this. And we did. Well, we didn't quite get it done by the end of the year. We floated just at the beginning of January. I mean, he wasn't wrong, right? We dragged it kicking and screaming over the line. It was not easy. And in fact, in the middle of our roadshow in December, they announced we went from tier 2, is it called tiers? It was, wasn't it? Tier 2 to tier 3 to tier 4 in a 2-week period. And by the end of our roadshow, they'd announced another national lockdown.
Great timing.
So our cornerstone investor pulled out. So we had to restructure how we were going to do it. So it wasn't easy, but it was the second most successful AIM business of 2021. It was really successful, really worked. We bought some great businesses, very, very, very good prices, raised lots of money, opened a lot, got some great deals on property, as we are, and now here we are with a really good run rate.
What's the plan for
So this year we need to just like bed in. Having bought 4 businesses in 2 years and opened a lot of sites, and now to be at 50, it's quite chaotic, as you would imagine. You know, different systems.
You bought 50 sites.
So we bought 4 individual businesses.
Yes.
The recent one was Dirty Martini, which we bought out of administration, and we've opened 13 of our own, taking us to a total of 50. Just under 50, actually, 47. And it's quite chaotic, and of course, what comes with that as well is lots of different teams and different cultures. So I've just got my team right around me, like properly. They're amazing, and they've been bedding in for a while now. And I think this year we need to I always say this, and there's something really exciting coming on, but we just need to bed in and just now make it work as one, you know, so we get all the synergies and we get the people that are motivated and we just get it right. You know, there's some...
I can't imagine you're all that patient in this space.
That's the problem. Like, and something really exciting happens and Michael and I are a nightmare as well, because obviously we're married, so it's like, oh, have you seen this? I can't unsee it. So, but we do need to bed in, because we need to really, it's like we've built the house and not the foundations. So we need to now retrofit the foundations really in the business.
How many of you have ever felt like that in your own business before? It's just so interesting, hey? It's like, talking about how many of you ever had especially in this room, how many of you have had fast growth before? Yeah, like it's multiple 6 weeks in a short space of time, and you just got to bed in a little bit. I guess my last real question before I open up to the floor, and I really encourage you guys to ask questions, because when asking, you get opportunity to ask a fantastic entrepreneur and Dragon some questions. So we'll open up in a moment. But being in the hospitality industry and service,
yes,
right? You spoke in the back. You were telling me how surround yourself with great people, etc. Have you ever? Is there one nugget you have for us, or one thing you've seen with us, or one piece of training, or something around? Tell us your idea of service and how important is service in your industry. I mean, obviously pretty important. But if you have any nuggets for us when it comes to training or anything like that, what have you seen work?
I think the thing I see work more than anything is often I think people are as good as their boss in a site, I call it, like a site, in a restaurant or a bar. So you can have the most amazing people on the floor, or you can have the most amazing people behind the bar, but actually if the general manager is just not up to it, it can move the needle in that site so quickly. And I can see it the same as the numbers go down for 2 or 3 weeks. If I were to change a manager,
2 or 3 weeks.
Literally, you can see it go back up again in 2 or 3 weeks. But it's very, very hard to find the right people.
Who makes a great manager in your industry?
It depends on the brand, actually. Some of the brands that are really big, really high turnover, and they're almost like they're machines. You need somebody who's really structured, great communicator, but very good at process. In the smaller sites, you need the magic. You need the person who...
Personality.
Yeah, that gets it, that understands the customer, because they're often really in front of a customer, whereas in the much bigger sites, you often don't see the manager so much. Yes. They are orchestrating.
Yes.
So it depends which site you're in. And I think one of the things that I find running multiple sites is that you have to take site by site and treat each site as an individual, like you would treat. I don't treat all my 4 kids the same. As it happens, they all go to 4 different schools now. I thought that was going to happen, but anyway, because that's what suits them, because they are 4 individuals. It's the same with businesses. And I was saying this to my team actually this morning. My team are amazing. I said, imagine if we've only got this one site. That's all we've got, just this site here. And all of us walk into it and we say, what are we going to do with it? I mean, imagine those brilliant brains just looking at one site. That seems very achievable, right? When you look at that, you think, well, who's the best manager to put in there? You don't think, I've got 46 managers and, 10 have just started and I've got to train them. They're not right. And, that's heavy. One site, what do we do with it? How do we market that site? Who's the best person to run it? Do we have the right bonus structure for that site to motivate those people? Is it right? Do we have the right menu offer? Really, this location, this site? Or are we just trying to put a brand into here because we own this brand? Is it really right for the site? When you look at each of the businesses as an individual business, but you say, we're going to put our brains on this one site, then it's almost, how can they not sit there, the whole team, and go, oh, well, of course I know the answer. One site. And that's, I think, the key, is you've got to treat, of course, it's much easier said than done, right? Like, we do actually have a lot of sites, and there's lots of other stuff to do, and. When you just look at it as that individual, then I think you get the right people into the right business. So you fit the two rather than looking at it as a big business and go, these are the types of GMs that we want.
Interesting. So chunk it down into something manageable.
What makes this work?
Got it.
And then retaining them. You definitely, you must all feel it when you walk into a bar or a pub or a restaurant and the manager's been there for 3 or 4 years, and you recognise them. It's got to a vibe, a feel, a family feel. You feel it. That's hard, especially because we've bought so many businesses. It's been hard to retain. That's what we have to make sure is you just retain the really good people.
Good. You guys learning something? Awesome. Okay, a couple of questions from the room. Jonathan, go for it.
No, go.
Let's try if we can with a microphone. If this one works, please work. No, it doesn't. Jonathan, you can have to shout above everyone.
That's right. Okay. So first of all, thank you, Carla.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You said at the beginning, you talked about how you were very values. That doesn't work either, right?
No, it does. It does. It works.
Is it working now? No. Okay.
There you go.
Yeah. No, someone's tapping it. It isn't either of us. It's not this one. Doesn't matter. Anyway,
Yes.
you said at the beginning
Okay,
about having
now.
specific values.
Oh, it's here. Yeah.
It's working out. You said at the beginning about really you were talking about your values.
Yes.
What is it that makes me want to become an entrepreneur? And it was
Yes.
your values that did that.
Yeah.
How far down the line do your values travel with so many sites, so many teams, so many GMs? Do you have a values list, 2-3 things that it doesn't matter how far down the channels we go, the person on the floor in bar here still knows that those values are your values that you do not compromise?
So yes, and I'm going to caveat it by saying that is what should happen, but it's hard work, right? Yeah. One of the things that I did this year, because for that absolute reason that I think I felt that often when I was going into the site, and also in head office as well, people were forgetting why we get up in the morning. Why we get up in the morning is because everybody in this room deserves a great night out. That's really why we get up. And so I created another WhatsApp group, much to everyone's annoyance, but this one's good. And I got everybody into a room like this and said to everybody to try and get that communication through, this is why we get up in the morning. And to try and remind everybody that it's about creating those magic moments. And what we do, there's now a WhatsApp group called Magic Moments, and it's by a long mile the most used WhatsApp group in the business. And the only thing you're allowed to put on it, the reason it exists, is to share magic moments. And it's amazing. And that to me is, whilst we are getting ourselves sorted, having bought all of these businesses and we've got new staff and it's, the mayhem of what you would expect having grown so quickly in 2 years and slowly pushing all of that out. If there's one way I can get through to everybody or I can keep something alive is the Magic Moments WhatsApp group, where I feel like at least even in the chaos that is around, I've still got that one way of reminding everybody why we exist. And also what also helps is, like, if you've got a site in Cardiff that's, we might not get, the people in London might not get to see, you can see, they're all out today. There's loads of stuff today. Everyone's out doing little Christmas visits. Everyone's got their Santa hats on. There's a corporate here and a corporate there, and we're opening tonight and doing this and that. And you can see it. You can see what's happening all over the country all the time in the bars, and that's been critical. And the reason I did it was for exactly why your question, exactly, because it's really hard.
Good job.
Really
Give
hard.
Jonathan a round of applause.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan.
Another question? Here we go. Erica? Thank you.
Bit of an odd one. Did you ever doubt your abilities because of advisors, especially while you were building your success and your reputation, and ultimately decide, no, what I want to do now is the best foot forward, which it did end up being, but with a lot of retaliation? And how did you overcome those types of situations?
So I had a sort of life-changing moment in my late 20s, I'm a working class girl from Stoke, massive imposter syndrome. And I was working at Pizza Express at the time, and we were this bit where I was sharing the office with the chief executive, and one of the little projects they put me on was to buy a business called Kettner's in Soho, and I was running the Bean. Yeah, it's great. It's Soho House own it now, actually, I think. But yeah, it was great. It was back in the day. It was also great, and I was 2 minutes late. I'm usually 2 minutes late for everything, but I was 2 minutes late for this meeting, and I was running the meeting on behalf of Pizza Express. And so I walked into the meeting, and my legal team were there. It was like it was a page turner on a sale and purchase agreement, and then their team was the other side. And as I walked into the room, the main guy on the other side, who was their legal counsel, didn't really look up. And I mean, I must have been 27, I reckon, at the time, 26, 27, probably 27. And he didn't really look up, and he said, "Oh, God for that, white with 1 sugar." And I had this amazing moment where I thought to myself, breathe. And time of death, exactly. Put my bag down, and I remember I was shaking actually as I went round to the coffee machine. It was like a filter coffee jug. And I made him his coffee. And I said, "Would anybody else like one?" Don't think anybody breathed at this point. And nobody else, obviously, it was no. And I put the coffee down in front of him, made myself a coffee, and then sat down. Got my lip gloss out, which is a really critical moment. Trying to buy myself a bit more time, my lip gloss on, and said, "Shall we start the meeting?" And as I said that, he looked up, and I watched the colour drain from his face. I watched it drain from his face. And the reason this was such a critical moment was because guess who walked out with the deal, right? Because he had misjudged, and he'd thought I wasn't there to run the meeting, and it stayed with me forever. And I think it empowered me so much, because what it made me realise was that my imposter syndrome was my superpower. And actually the fact that I'd walked into this room and I had been underestimated was my superpower. So I was like, crack on, all of you. Keep underestimating me, because I'm the one who's going to walk out with the deal. And it really, it never, ever, ever left me. And I think it's another saying where you say that you never see the rhino coming. And it's like, actually the biggest killer in the savannah is the rhino, but nobody ever thinks this big fat thing with tiny little legs is ever going to do any harm, but like, watch it move. And so, yes, I've been underestimated so many times. And yes, for years, I really suffered from that imposter syndrome. But that moment changed my life, because I realised that actually in all of that was my superpower. So since then, of course, everybody wobbles, and of course I question, of course. But fundamentally, no, it's your superpower if people underestimate you.
Good job. Give Eric a round of applause. Great story. Great story. I think time of death is going to become a thing in this group now. Hey? Another question? Another question? Angus at the back there. Microphone behind you, Angus.
Hi.
Go for it.
Hi, thank you so much for your wisdom. I'm curious around that lockdown thing when you decided to stay in bricks and mortar when all the rest of us were panicking and trying to do something else. What was your mindset, and why were you convinced that bricks and mortar was the direction, and clearly very successfully, as opposed to thinking, I'm going to pivot, I'm going to get out, I'm going to do...
Is this in relation to Nightcap?
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
So, I mean, I think I talked about this almost like the perfect storm, really. But the really big driving factor was that we are social beings. Like, you can't have a drink online. I mean, did we all do the pub quizzes?
Yeah, it's interesting, just to segue there a little bit. How many of you did records in your practices the year after lockdowns?
Yeah.
I checked them out. It's like, it was just like, people came to our practice because we were allowed to stay open.
Yeah,
so
okay.
beauticians had to
of course,
close, but we had a little period we had to close.
Yeah.
But people were coming to us just for an outing. Hey, like people were like, I couldn't go anywhere else, I'm just coming to get a justice for an outing, just to chat to people.
Yeah, that's why I stuck to bricks and mortar.
We're so busy. Yeah.
Exactly that reason, because I just fundamentally believe that you cannot fight nature. You can't. Nature's always going to win, and we need not just a drink. No, I'm joking. We all need we need social interaction. you know, and bricks and mortar. In fact, I was telling you earlier, wasn't I, that a friend of mine works at HMRC, and they've just been told that come the new year, they've got to go back to the office 5 days a week.
Everyone.
You know, and I think all of us that have tried this hybrid working, actually, you know, really to drive that culture through, you need people in the office. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Angus, let's ask your question.
Does that answer the question?
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, I'll give Angus a round of applause.
Yeah, always believing.
Lilies, you want to answer? Lilies just in front there, and then Felicity will come across to you as well after that. Go.
Thank you very much for your time. From being working class kind of
Yeah, you go.
to where you are now, what's the one money mindset that you had to shift as you became more successful?
Yes, I think almost certainly, actually. So I think a lot of people think that entrepreneurs are really big risk takers. And I would say we're not. It's always calculated. So I start everything with what's my downside and can I handle it? And if the answer is yes, then I don't really see it as a risk. So I think that's, from a money mindset, that's key, really key. Is
my takeaway there was, can I handle it?
Yeah, can I handle it? Because there's always a downside, right? But it's can I handle it? Can I handle it? Is my downside? And sometimes the answer's no. Then you absolutely walk away. Don't go near that. And that can be financially, it could be, but usually it's financially, you're risking something that's too big, right? So it could be financially, but it could be stability, security, whatever it might be. But that's absolutely my mindset with money as well, is can I handle it? Can I handle the downside? And if the answer is yes, let's go.
Oh, nice.
And also, you know, I think I would struggle to be the person that didn't do it. I would really struggle with that. Like, I couldn't have that legacy of the person that came up with a great idea and never actually did it.
Got it.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would struggle. I'd rather give something a go with a risk that I can handle than not. So I never really suffer from decision paralysis, if you know what I mean. I'm like, yes, no, and I'll go for it as long as I can. But I've walked away from lots of stuff because it's the risk's too big.
Good job. Good job. Give Lily a round of applause. Okay. Felicity, go for it.
I don't think
Yes.
it is working. So culture is really important to me in my business as well.
Yeah.
And so could you share some of the magic moments that you mentioned?
Ooh, yeah. There's plenty of them, actually, and often it's not just about an amazing magic moment that's been created for a customer. So it could be a birthday celebration or somebody doing a really random funny dance in a bar that somebody will video. But it's also about celebrating staff. So and it wasn't necessarily, that wasn't like actually part of the brief. It wasn't supposed to be necessarily about celebrating something that a member of staff had done. It could also be about, that's what it's grown into, that they also celebrate when somebody passes their bar exams. Don't mean barrister, I mean like actually mixology. You know, somebody passes those and they get qualified. It's sharing something that somebody's done that's really great. I mean, yesterday I put one on. I do post if I'm out in the sites, but
I do hope you're posting this on your magic moment.
I should do,
just,
shouldn't I?
just to say.
Should do.
Just to say, yeah.
Yeah.
Go. So yeah.
I was out yesterday. I was in the office, and the sales team. It's all booking all of the corporate stuff, and I've never actually used our sales system. So I thought, right, I'm going to go and answer the phone. So I went up yesterday. I drove everybody mad yesterday because I went into the office without any meetings. I just annoyed everyone. Kept sitting down next to people going, what are you up to then? Can I help? So I went up to the sales department and put the headset on and actually answered some calls, you know, and took bookings. And it was great trying to learn how to use the system. Really good fun. And that would be a magic moment, because that's really important for them
To see.
as well, that I was that I've just done a booking but those magic moments are about celebrating the customers and
Team.
staff. And that, I think it's the staff. That's been a really interesting, how it's developed, I would say it's 50-50 actually.
Oh, good job. Give Felicity a power clap. Ready? Let's go with Chris, and then we'll go to Jack in the corner, and then we'll go to some
Hi.
photos.
I love Katniss, but
Yeah,
that's not
it's
what I'm
great.
talking about. As a husband and wife team, how do you manage not to talk business all the time?
Oh, God, it's a nightmare. It's hard work, that is. And sometimes we have to readdress it and actually set the boundaries. It's normally me, because contrary to what you might think, as I'm sat here chatting, I'm actually quite introverted. So I repower in silence. And my husband is so extroverted. It's like that. Sometimes he just doesn't. It never stops. It's constant, right? So I just have to be quite strict. And we also operate often differently. So I'm like up in the gym 6 o'clock every morning. So I hit the day with quite I need silence, get to the gym, work out, then I'm happy to chat. But he's the opposite. He's an evening person, so he wants to chat in the evening. And I'm like 5 o'clock, done. Don't want to talk about work. So it caused friction for a while, but now we're brilliant. Now we're like, stop talking.
Good.
Like, oh, okay.
And
sometimes I'll say to him, you've got to signal to me somehow if you want, because I'm then in my safe space, right? So my brain's relaxed, and with the dog, might be watching TV or whatever. I'm off, and he might go straight in with a problem. Oh, cash flow, and I'm in my safe space, and then and he's the only person that can get in as well. That's the problem. Is nobody else that I work with can infiltrate. They can't cause stress. I'm like Teflon. But he gets straight in. So I have to say, you have to signal. You have to just say, oh, can I just I just need 10 minutes to talk about work. And then I'll either go no, or I'll say, yeah, actually, let's go for a walk or whatever. But you can't just go straight in, because you enter. I feel it. But do you work together? No. But
I talk a lot of business.
yeah, it's hard work, and I think you have to be very, very, very honest with each other. And now we laugh about it. Most of the time we laugh about it and we get it right, but not always. And sometimes I'm like, not now.
very good.
I'm on the outnet shopping. Putting stuff in my basket that I'm never going to buy, like we all do.
Give Chris a round of applause. In the corner there. Here you go, yourself.
Rian?
Yeah.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
My question's about kids. I'm a young dad, 2 kids. You're obviously massively successful financially. With your kids, how are you making sure you're not spoiling them and making sure you came from a working class background, and obviously that was an incredible fuel for you. How are you making sure you're not spoiling them and making sure their desires fulfilled and what you directed them into?
It's such a great question. And it's something that for years, kind of almost nothing keeps me awake at night, actually, kids, but kind of kept me awake at night. It was something I really thought about. I remember having a conversation with my dad, and my dad going, it's not their fault. Because I was like, oh my God, they're so ungrateful, they don't understand. It's not their fault, Sarah. But I have absolutely, even the 14-year-old's got a job now. So it's only the 12-year-old that hasn't. I don't give them pocket money, because I think you have to work. And when they were younger, everything was given context of value. We explained everything even though I've done really well financially, I still, you can't take the girl out of Stoke, but you can't take Stoke out of the girl. I am still devastated that Wilco's shutting. Devastated. I love a 3 for 2. They have absolutely been brought up with that mentality of don't waste, hate waste. That's really important, and also very, very, very consistent as well. Like I think that's something that we've kind of drilled into them all the way through. But now, as soon as they hit 14, actually, they've all got jobs in, all 3 of them. My 14-year-old is babysitting, to be fair, but the other 2 are in hospitality. They've both got jobs in restaurants, and they've got to hold that down, and that's your pocket money. That's your money. You can do with it whatever you want to, and it really makes a difference when they get to teenage years, and and we've always said no, that's too expensive. No. The challenge is where I would say we live in a really nice house, and that's definitely, God, compared to where I grew up, that's crazy. But they still can't really believe that they live in a really nice house, if that makes sense. But it's a very, very fine balance, and I think the most important thing is you have to be really consistent on your messaging. For me, it was waste more than anything, because the 2 things that we spend money on, that is, you can see, that the kids would see and feel, are holidays, and also the house. It's nice. Everything else, I would say, they see us think about value all the time. All the time.
Okay, question on that is the decision, if you guys have been faced with this, is do you fly business or not? With young kids.
Yeah.
And it's something that I'm personally struggling with.
Yeah, it's really...
Because I'm if Emma starts flying business class at 6...
There's no turning back after that.
So that's a big problem.
That's the path. We didn't. And actually, it was part of that decision. It really was. It was just the 2 of us. But we didn't with the kids. And in fact, when I left Dragon's Den, that's why I left Dragon's Den, as I took my kids out of school to go travelling around the world, because my dad didn't let me have the gap year. I knew I'd get there in the end. And we had a budget every day that we set, and the kids actually ran the budget that day. We travelled economy, we bought economy round the world tickets. Obviously, to go travelling around the world it's obviously you've got to have done all right to be able to do it in the first place. So I'm aware of that. But they ran that budget, and what was brilliant about that actually was that there wasn't enough to do something really cool and stay somewhere nice in a day, or even to travel a long distance with petrol in a day. So they had to make the decision. So we'd get to the point where if they wanted to stay somewhere nice for a week, they saw the impact that had. That meant supermarket all week. That's totally fine. Really cool. We all cooked, we barbecued, it was great, but they understood the relative value of money. And I think that's the key, is the relative value. And I can honestly say, hand on heart, that my kids, they're not spoilt. So that bit must have worked. That thing about not wasting money must have worked.
Good question.
Trying to keep those northern values in my kids, and they sound so posh as well, because we grew up down south. They're all glass and grass and... It's not their fault, is it? It's not their fault, but it is painful.
Give Jack a round of applause, please. And then last, have you guys enjoyed Sarah? Yeah. Awesome, right? And then last question.
I've got to say, what an amazing group of people. You're so easy to chat with. Really, awesome. Really great. Thank you so much, honestly.
Last question, and then we're going to go straight into photos. I want to be respectful of Sarah's time, and then everyone have a quick photo with Sarah. And thank you so much, guys. It's been absolutely incredible. We'll go for it. Go.
I had a question. Is there a book that you would say that you're maybe still reading, or you've read a couple of times, that you say for every small business owner, this is the book that you need to read. It's exceptional.
So I'm not a massive, I don't read loads of business books, but there's one that definitely impacted me years ago. Was I really like Tim Ferriss, and his 4-hour work week was really helped me to understand. To me, to understand the relative value of time, and I think because the most important thing that we all have is time, and it's the commodity really that we all trade on a daily basis.
Has anyone read 4-Hour Work Week in the room? Yeah.
And it is that definitely. I took from it. You can take from it whatever you want to take from it, and I didn't read it cover to cover. It's a nice book you can dip in and out of, but I liked the values of putting, it's putting life first. So it's like you always, I don't believe in a career path. I really believe in a life path, and then your work's absolutely just got to fall into place. You've got to make it work for the life that you want right now. So the stuff I did while I had 4 small children is very different than the stuff I'm doing now and the stuff that I did before, because it depends on the period of your life. And so I would say for me it was less about business, because I think you can learn that from knocking on doors, actually. Learn that from people, for sure. And actually, groups like this, when you're with like-minded people, that you can go, well, what did you do? Oh, well, that's great. What did you do? And you can learn from other people. That's the best way, I think. But what that did was just set in, it absolutely reinforced what I fundamentally believed, which is my time is the most precious thing. And that's what I've got to trade. That's what I've got to keep really precious and try and make everything else work. Yeah.
Good job. Giving a round of applause. Yeah, cool. Awesome.